Sorry, I'll repeat myself a bit when I.
You'll find that stuff.
Okay, so welcome councillors, officers and members of the public to the Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee, and nice to see a few extra members of the council that are here to watch. Reminder, please switch all mobile phones to silent. There are members of the public and press attending this meeting virtually, so I think there are actually, but
Not at the minute.
they might join us. So can I ask that those attending virtually switch off your microphone to avoid any distraction during the meeting? The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channels. Reminder to all for councillors to ensure those attending virtually can hear the proceedings. The recording to capture the entire meeting. Please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to councillors by their first names. Please ensure that any questions are directed through the chair. Please be kind and courteous to each other at all times, showing respect when another member is addressing the committee. Please be mindful that the individual conversations not only detract from the primary discussions, but will also be picked up by the recording. There is no fire alarm planned, therefore, upon hearing the fire alarm, please leave the building via your nearest marked fire exit and assemble at the top of the car park. Please be aware that the contents displayed on your iPad or laptop may be seen by others or members of the public attending the meeting. Therefore, please close down screens which are displaying confidential information during the public part of meetings. That's the formal bit. Now I've just realised I'm not that organised about it. It is. So item 1, apologies for absence.
Chair, I have apologies from councillors Spear and Warden.
Are there any others? No, thank you. 2, approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of December 2025 attached. Are we all happy that I can sign those as a correct record? Yeah. Do we don't need to formally move it?
If we could move.
Yeah.
Second.
I saw Councillor Turton first and Councillor Bishop. Thank you.
You put me down as abstain because I wasn't here.
Yes.
So then a vote on those in favour. That's fine. Item 3, which is items which, in the opinion of the chair, should be considered by the meeting as a matter of urgency. I don't believe there are any.
No, Chair.
Item 4, declarations of interest.
I've received none, Chair.
Obviously, we can pick any up as we go through. Item 5, to agree the agenda between Part A and B. Again, there's no Part B, so we'll spread into Part A and our internal items. And item 6 is our North Devon Council off-street parking places order 2020. I think John can deal with this quite quickly.
First of all, apologies, members, because the papers that were on the agenda were last year's parking order. So apologies if you read 117 pages of 2025's parking order, but it only came to light this morning that actually we'd put last year's order on there. So apologies for that. Kelly kindly sent out the shortened version of the report this afternoon because there are no significant changes to the order for 2026. This report went through strategy and resources on Monday. A copy is here for your attention. The reason it normally comes here second is obviously it goes to strategy and resources, and then this whole order normally comes to you if there's changes such as changes to pricing or changes to structural elements within the order. The only requested change that came forward this year wasn't through the NDC car parks, was actually when we go out to towns and parishes for any of their respective car parks. And the only request came from Combe Martin in relation to 3 of their car parks with a small price increase. So the amended report that came out to you this afternoon just gave you a very short covering report, which had about 3 pages on it, telling you that there are no significant changes to all of the NDC car parks and just one request by Combe Martin to increase the charges accordingly. That's set out in a notice which gets published, so we don't need to consult on the change because it's only a price change for Combe Martin, and that's been approved by Strategy and Resources on Monday. Because you're not then approving the order on the full council, there is no such recommendation for you to make tonight. It's just to note the report that came out today. So happy to take any questions, Chair, but it's just a report to note that's been the Strategy and Resources.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John?
Question is, although we've only had the 2024 report, what about the pricing information at the back? Is that Because at the back, it's got on page 105, for example, onwards, it's got lots of pricing. Is that also
That's
out of date?
all out of date. So everything that was on the original agenda was all this time last year's report that had all of the pricing that was agreed at full council for 25-26. So ignore everything that's on pages 15 to 122 because that all related to this time last year. Apologies for you having to read that in advance. The subsequent reports that went out this afternoon just had one page of an appendix which had the increased prices for 2 items they requested.
And that's it, isn't it?
And that's it. So it's just one request from parish council to increase their charges. No further changes across any of the NDC lines. Apologies for the mishap. And yeah, that's just remember some notes. So
So it's just the note, there's no.
if there's any further questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any further questions on that, members? You're confused, and I. Very good. Okay, all happy? So we're noting that. Thank you. Then. Sorry. Realise I'm going along with that. Sorry, those online, Kelly is having to run around delivering papers. Thanks. Okay, so item 7 is a work programme 2025, 26 papers under 23 under 26, and potential items for internal scrutiny committee to discuss. If you refer to pages 127, 28, then that's where your template is. What I propose is obviously thank you to the 3 members that have submitted one. Happy to go across to those members and then for you to introduce the item that you read that one. The item that you've submitted, and then obviously any questions that anybody's got, and then just a reminder that we need to really be conscious of our template when we're looking at priorities. The other little thing that I'd say is obviously we need to be conscious of officer time and work. So we've currently got the work programme, the 2 task groups running, which is the health inequality task group led by Sarah, and the panel market task group that I think I'm chairing at the moment, which hopefully we've done our first meeting of that in about a month from now, hopefully. So we're just waiting for some documents from the planning market team, and then we'll be able to get that running. So I think before we actually start a substantive bit of work, we do need to get one of those at least off our books, if you like. That doesn't mean that we can't still ask questions and get answers to as we get reported. So it doesn't always have to be a complete task group or task and pitch group. It can simply be questions that we can get answers to as we go along. So the first one I've got here. Oh, right here. Using comms to increase awareness and savings and review social media.
This is one that I brought forward, but if I can, I've got a more urgent one, if I can skip straight to that, which I know that most of those that have joined online come to
I'll
discuss.
do that one because I've literally, Peter, I've literally picked these up. Let's do with the sources there.
We can deal with it, but I like I said, my priority would now switch to the other one, really. So,
Well, I'm not, yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy if you want to do that. We'll do. Which one?
yeah, so this is talking about the decision that's been made about trade waste.
Yeah.
So I'm sure many of you have had people reach out to you. It may be that those in more rural areas such as mine have been more impacted by this, but I've had several emails, including I've got one on my screen now from New House Farm Cottages, where I've had others from particularly rural businesses that are really concerned by the decision. Now, it's not for us to overturn the decision. We have no power to do that. But what I think we can do is take a look at how that decision's been made. It's things that people are saying, which I kind of understand is was there enough information to really make a decision? I know that this committee made recommendations and requested that certain information was brought back to this committee. We requested that a detailed public consultation was held. And we made a series of recommendations for certain information that was brought forward, including looking at the cost of alternative services. None of that was done, which does make you wonder, why was it brought here in the first place and what is our purpose if our recommendations were completely overlooked. The other reality is it looks like there was a consultation, but several people, it's not as good to create social media, but several people have mentioned on social media that they received a particularly odd phone call, which basically asked if they were happy about the service. I also saw a report which basically said from the person that conducted that, it wasn't going to be devastating, but several people who even had that phone call made it clear that actually that it would be devastating for their businesses. So I think it's important that we need to review how that decision has been looked into and make some quick recommendations. We need to move quite quickly. It's a bit of an unusual situation because we would take ages to look into this kind of thing. So I've put down some ideas, but it's around looking at how that decision's been brought forward, how the information that's been shared, and was there really enough information and due diligence for councillors to make an informed decision. I don't know what others' thoughts on this are.
Thank you.
I put the bit.
I see it. Thank you, Peter. And I think, like you say, you recognise right at the start that unfortunately, the system we have doesn't mean we can call in, so we haven't got a cabinet system. So it is, like you say, we put forward our recommendations. I think my observation, I'll come to you in a second, that Councillor Bushell, my observations are that, this is quite a big service change. And as you say, we needed more time, probably in hindsight it's a wonderful thing, but we could have done with more time for us to have probably looked at it to make recommendations. I mean, unfortunately, we put our recommendations it's for that committee to decide whether they want to take them or not. I think I think, from the respect of what this is asking for initially, it's not a lot we can do, but I think we do need to look at how we review the impact of it going forward. And we also, and I think this is another little frustration at the moment, which we're waiting for is because we're very new till we've had that annual council, John, isn't it? Where, a lot of reports that go into strategy of resources before they come to us, and then we're looking at them and they've already made the decision. So it is most definitely the case that we need timely reports coming to us to be able to make recommendations. But that's sort of outside what we're talking about here, really.
Well, consolidating what you said though, is when you look at the circumstances of this, because of the date it was held, it's beyond the 9 days. So no public can ask a question at the next meeting. Councillors can't put forward any questions to the leader because it's within the 9 days, and a motion can't be raised. So it does feel incredibly undemocratic.
Yeah, and I think the group, Councillor Crabs here, I believe, I've been led to believe that the group leaders have spoken. There's potentially things moving forward, but don't want to say any more than that at this moment. Councillor Bushell, then Councillor Wilson. Sorry, I've spotted you now, thanks to Councillor Wilson. So I'll go Councillor Bushell, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Bullock, and then Councillor Maskell.
I think all of the concerns that we raised at the last meeting have come to pass here. It wasn't that we couldn't see this happening or we didn't see it happening. And there is absolutely no point in things coming to this committee if we ask for such serious things as further information, which wasn't in the initial report, or we ask for a consultation with the service users. There's no point in the council having a scrutiny function if we're not allowed to scrutinise. And I think the feeling going away from the last meeting was that it would go to policy development, it would go to S&R, and then it would come back to us before a decision was made, so we could have the information that we requested and therefore give a report or a recommendation with the information. I think Councillor Jones is very tactful by saying that he finds this incredibly undemocratic. In fact, it completely undermines this entire committee's scrutiny function for it to be overlooked that the reports don't have the information once we've highlighted new things. And I think I'd ask that senior management review this completely so we are able to scrutinise. And I think perhaps at the next meeting, we may well, if there is something as serious as this, pull it from the S&R committee meeting so we can do our job prior to it going to S&R, because it's absolutely pointless us wasting our time talking about something if we find such vagaries or holes within a report and it is pushed forwards regardless. That should concern absolutely everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. I'll pick up on the senior manager comment first, because I think ultimately when the council has set the constitution, if you like, and how the council works and in the democracies, and I think, the way we are set up, we can make recommendations, we can put forward proposals to the S&R, but the S&R committee are elected to make the decision, so they can choose or not choose to take our recommendations. Clearly, some members are going to be disappointed that have not taken this committee's recommendations, but that I guess, for the want of a better word, John will put it better than me in a minute, but that is the structure that we work to. So we are where we are. As I say, I believe that group leaders have been discussions. I think I'm led to believe that there's other things that have come to light that we maybe weren't aware of even on Monday. So yeah, there is no doubt.
That's my point.
I think my comment
it wasn't ready to go to S&R.
Back to my notes and stuff. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is important that when we're making major service changes, that we do need time, as a council, not just this committee, but as a council, to be able to properly understand it, to properly consult, properly follow the structures. And it will be much more helpful when there's a structure there that any decisions come to this committee before it goes to the S&R committee. John, did you want to come in there? And then, sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, just add a couple of points, Chair. So yeah, obviously you touched on the point I was going to mention. Obviously, the peer review did touch on the items that come to scrutiny and policy prior to going to strategy and resources, and that will be addressed moving forwards, because at the next full council meeting you'll be approving, or hopefully approving, the committee timetable moving forwards. That will have scrutiny and policy meetings happening in advance of strategy and resources. So things of those natures that would come to this committee would then come here prior to then S&R. So that is being addressed moving forwards. The agendas for strategy and resources do go through a group leaders meeting. So all group leaders are on that chairs meeting in terms of agreeing what's on that agenda. So it did go to obviously December's meeting initially. Obviously it then came to this committee. It then went back to January's S&R this week, as we know. In between December and January, one of the outcomes from the December meeting was that yes, further information was required, and also an opportunity for all councillors to ask questions to the team about any concerns or further information they wanted, because there was a consciousness about obviously the time we had to have a decision made prior to any decision that might impact customers that may require then a notice period in advance of that. Hence the ask for all councillors to contribute towards any questions to the team or to lead members or to group leaders to be given to the team, so that could come back to the meeting on Monday at Strategy and Resources. So that did happen, and a number of councillors did contribute to that. Obviously, Strategy and Resources took on board the comments from this committee as part of the minutes going back to that committee. So the concerns that were raised and the points that needed further information were taken back to strategy and resources as well. So all of that information was there as part of them making an informed decision. Yes, I think in hindsight, we'd have all liked to have had more time to address some of the points and have further information, etc. But there was, in our view, sufficient information there for members to make a decision. In terms of the information that was provided, an updated report did go back to strategy and resources that addressed some of the points that were raised either from this committee or from questions asked by members, and all answers were given back as part of the appendices as well. So there was dialogue and information that went back as part of the updated report this week. Yes, I appreciate that strategy and resources did not then send it back to policy scrutiny and policy development meeting as requested, but obviously that is quite rightly within the powers of the constitution that are there at the moment. That's obviously within your gift in terms of the committee system that you have in place. Previous committee systems that have been in place have been an executive and overview of scrutiny, where quite rightly an executive decision that's made can be called in by an overview and scrutiny. Unfortunately, under a committee system, that doesn't allow those powers to pass on to scrutiny and policy. So that is the different context that you're operating here, that strategy and resources do have that constitutional power. It is cross-party in terms of the representation on that committee, which is different to that of a previous executive committee.
Thank you, John. Councillor Wilson, then not forgotten you, Liz. So Councillor Wilson.
Only very briefly, just to say that I would agree with bringing this forward for discussion. I agree with what Councillor Jones is saying. Even having listened to what you're saying, John, I still think there are lessons that should be learned from this, and really it's been rushed, and I think there's reputational damage to the council, which it's really important. Us as actual councillors who are out there in the community, we have to face people that we've been liaising with about this. And I just feel like, I'll be honest, I would like to see the decision that was made on Monday go a different way, but we've obviously presumably explored that that's not going to happen. But I am quite concerned about the impact it will have on communities, not just rural ones, as I said at the meeting. So regardless of that, I think it should be, in all transparency, in the interest of being democratic and open, we should be looking into how the decision was made and whether we could have had more time. I think, and more information.
Councillor Bullock. Good evening.
Good evening all. Yeah, I thoroughly agree with what everyone has said, actually. The thing is, it undermines our role for scrutiny, because basically, if we're doing scrutinising after the event, it's a waste of time us doing it, isn't it? It's complete and utter waste of our time, and we're just pointless. And as Councillor Wilson said, this decision is so damaging to our reputation as a council, because this is going to go out to our businesses in North Devon for them to think, they can't even be bothered to pick up our trade waste. That's how much they value the businesses in North Devon. And going forward, you think about it, with the reform of government across the country, central government said, well, North Devon don't even bother to look after their businesses. They can't be bothered to pick up their trade waste. That's how the message is going to go out. And the thing is, we had no chance as a scrutiny committee to even, this was back in November, we put our recommendations forward, and it's now January. Why could that not have been brought back to us in December for us to discuss it, before this? It seems absolutely rubbish for us to be after the event. That's my comments. And I think it's a ridiculous decision anyway, but there we are. It's been done.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Bullock, sorry. Councillor Maskell.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak at your meeting. Obviously, I'm on strategy and resources, and I am very disappointed with the outcome. This came to our December strategy and resources committee, and I don't believe that we were made aware that Scrutiny and Policy Committee had made concerns. If some people were aware, but I wasn't aware of those concerns when we looked at the papers for December. We were asked to approve the decision that at that meeting, but we raised similar concerns and asked for more questions to be answered. A number of us did submit questions to be looked into, but I didn't feel that those questions were answered in any depth. And when the updated report came back to us, I still didn't feel that we had addressed the issues that had been raised. And I wasn't aware that we had the option to send it back to your committee either. That's obviously, I haven't been in this situation before, so yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I do feel that we were pressurised into making a decision on Monday, and obviously the vote was split, so it was half and half, and obviously the chair took the casting vote. But I am concerned that, you know, the impact this will have has been echoed by other councillors, and that I feel the businesses feel that there's been a lack of consultation, and I just feel this is not going to sit well with the business community and even the public. It doesn't seem a nice way to treat anyone. If this is, obviously we can't reverse a decision, but Councillor Crabb raised an idea in the S&R meeting that, you know, the contracts that we have as a commercial enterprise with trade waste could collectively be sold on to one of the private waste companies, and a couple of other people locally have actually raised that, you know, because that would then take the pressure off of the businesses that use us to go out and find someone else, and also we would have an opportunity to ensure that the little businesses who might not be picked up by the private companies could be sort of mopped up in that they have to be looked after as well, which it would at the very least be a gesture of goodwill by us. So I thought that was a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maskell. And yeah, I mean, I am a little bit concerned about something you said, and I just wanted to check with, I guess it's John or Adam, or is the fact that you didn't receive our
I can clarify.
Waiting
recommendations.
to join the room, I think. You might want to wait until they join.
I've just got it up while you were talking. The minute extract was attached to the agenda for the Strategy and Resources Committee on the 1st of December under that item, and it clearly states your recommendations, Chair. So they did go on.
So our recommendations were there on the agenda, Councillor Maskell.
Perhaps it could be highlighted with a brief
Apologies.
synopsis, a verbal synopsis.
Sorry, can I just remind members to raise their hand and wait?
So usual process, Chair, is obviously if there's a minute extract attached to a then report that's coming to committee, that's normally then verbalised when the report is presented. So like when we take reports to full council, such as the performance report, we'd always make sure we refer to the extracts from the minutes of SNR and policy development. So likewise, when the report went to the December meeting, there would have been a minute extract on the agenda, as the committee clerk has pointed out. So when presented, that would have been verbalised to say, as well as the report on the agenda, there is obviously a minute extract shown as an appendix A, so that would have been highlighted when that was presented.
Thank you.
It's in the detail of the report as well, saying
Yeah.
that the actions.
So what there was there, I mean that's
The report itself then refers to the appendix.
Yes.
that was a minor thing, but I think
Just to say, someone's trying to join the meeting.
I'll come to Councillor Bishop. And I'll just wait a minute, let this person in because,
Alison Stevenson.
Okay. And then Councillor Bishop.
Yeah, I was working at YMCA this morning in South Molton, and they knew nothing about this. The trade waste was not going to be picked up anymore. They were very shocked, and the first thing they suggested was that we should have put the price up. Now, I mean, I don't know whether was that one of our recommendations. I can't remember.
It's part of the
I think
constitution.
it was. Yeah, absolutely. I just think we've been ignored. It's just and sort of brushed aside. It feels like I'm just being brushed aside. My opinions. It's I agree with him, what everybody else is.
Yeah, I think, like I say, we unanimously, I mean, it was a unanimous decision by this committee to put that recommendation to the Strategy and Resources Committee. Got you, sorry. Yeah, so it is, and I think, just picking up, I mean, the context, really picking up on some of what was said, from my point of view, I mean, we are in a tricky position, aren't we? We've had successive governments of both colours now that treat, let's be honest, they treat rural areas like we, just don't care about us, do they? I mean, and the reality is this is a non-statutory service, and it was losing £200,000 a year. Is that the rough figure?
It was about 69,000 currently.
Yeah.
But obviously moving forward, there was
we'd have to buy
highlighted additional costs that were adding further cost pressure to the service.
Yeah. So, if that's the context, that we've had government stripping cash from rural councils, and, the county council, for instance, have had to close care homes and children's homes, and, it's just quite ridiculous, and it's false economy. And, I think it's nobody on this council, whatever colour party they're from, want to be seeing it, to be taking services away from small businesses who, again, governments seem to want to pick on small businesses, don't they? So it is frustrating. I mean, I think, conscious that Councillor Crabbe wanted to come in, I probably should have let him in before I carried on. But yeah, I mean, no, I'm going to bring you in, Councillor Crabbe, because I think I've got a way forward.
All right, okay. Thank you for that, Chair. And again, as Prue says, thank you for letting me speak at a meeting, which, to be honest, I got no business being here, but there we are.
Everybody's got a business being here.
But there's a couple of things. Right now, the evidence, I get a little bit political first, but let's not dwell on that. But I mean, the point that's been made that as a committee system, there is no right of scrutiny. But equally, if it's a committee system, which is where we're all supposed to be pulling together on the same side and the same team, you shouldn't really have one group coming in at 9 o'clock for a whip meeting and then have members in the Strategy and Resources saying, I don't agree with this, I don't want to be whipped, but I got to vote that way. That shouldn't be happening in an S&R meeting if it's a committee system. End of. Now, the other thing is that what was happening...
I'll answer that point there, because I'm obviously not personally not aware of that.
Yeah.
And obviously, with anything, if it's an allegation of, there's a monitoring officer, and probably, complaints need to be directed there, because we are dealing with the hearsay on that. I would suggest. I don't know if John.
There is absolutely no evidence of that, Chair, and obviously, if there is obviously accusations made, then obviously that will be looked into. But there is no evidence of that. I think I just want to come back on a couple of points. Obviously, there is no scrutiny. We mentioned there's no scrutiny function in this committee. There is a scrutiny function. It's just the scrutiny powers to call in decisions. Obviously, are not.
The point you made was that as an executive, there would have been a scrutiny power.
As an executive, there would have been a scrutiny power to call a decision in. That's not to say you haven't got a scrutiny function as a committee. I think you said that there is no scrutiny function of a committee. This committee obviously has got a scrutiny function, but obviously in line with the constitution powers it has, those powers obviously are less than what you would have had under an executive function. So I think it's important that members are aware of making sure that point is clarified.
Yeah, I mean, all I was doing there, to be clear, to make it absolutely clear, was drawing attention to what you'd said, and the fact that under the committee system, you haven't got the same right of scrutiny as you would under the executive thing. That's quite clear. And the other thing that perhaps members of this committee ought to know is that the decision made at S&R was not between continuing and pinning it off, pardon the pun. The decisions, the two decisions made were either A, as of what has happened, is to completely cease the service, or B, the second decision made was to cease the recycling element, which would have meant that prices would only have had to increase by 7 to 8% to break even. So those were decisions made. Scrutiny did not vote on maintaining the system in full place and replacing a £200,000 vehicle and adding 20% to the fees. That was not what Scrutiny discussed or voted on. Just so you know. So those were the two things that we ended up voting on. That's fact. That's just.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Crabbe.
Yeah, just so that was the two things that members obviously voted on. The actual report and recommendations was for members to consider. There were three elements to it, in a sense. There was to make a decision whether to continue the service in full, or to cease the service in full, or to cease the service in part, which is the point Councillor Crabbe was just referring to, i.e. ceasing the recycling element. So there were three options for consideration, in a sense, that members considered. Each of those had consideration about putting prices up if they wanted to retain the service in full or retain the service in part, or obviously the financial implication in terms of if they decided to make that decision to cease the service. So all three options were tabled in a sense. All of the financial implications behind each option were presented, and obviously then members voted. Obviously then members voted on the amended motion that came forwards, which was around the decision to potentially retain the refuse element and not retain the recycling element. That was obviously voted, and obviously voted against. So then the substantive motion in terms of ceasing the service was then put forwards. I think the key thing, Chair, is obviously this committee, obviously, as much as we're talking about it now, can't alter or change that decision. We're obviously on the work programme item, which is about the things you want to look at in the future. I think as Councillor Jones has put forward, it's around if there is something you want to look at. Obviously the proposal in the paper that's put forward is to review of the decision to the trade waste service. Well, obviously that decision has been made by Strategy and Resources. That can't be reviewed, amended or altered. That decision in a sense has happened. But obviously I think what you're alluding to is reviewing the process that has taken place in order to get to that point where the decision was made. And that's obviously something that as a committee you're considering as part of your work programme.
Can I, yeah, I've got Councillor Bushell and Councillor Jones. I mean, obviously we've heard what everybody said, and I think, we are, cross party, cross committee, we are all in agreement that, we're disappointed that our voice wasn't listened to as a committee. So is there a mechanism that I appreciate we cannot call it in, but I do get the feeling from the committee and the members that have spoken is that we would like to express disappointment and possibly ask that it's, that elements of it at least are considered. Have we got that ability tonight just to make a request? I know we can't formally call it in or formally tell them, but could we put forward a simple request? And if we can, I've got to who? To the S&R committee.
The item you're considering, you haven't got an item on for trade waste decision. Your item on the agenda is looking at your work programme for things that you want to look at in the future. Obviously, as part of your minutes, no doubt these minutes will all obviously include the things we've just been talking about and the views and expressions of concern that obviously these members have had this evening in terms of the decision that members of S&R took on Monday. Certainly those views will be included within the minutes. What you haven't got is any recommendations you make about anything outside of your work programme, because you haven't got any other items or motions that you can make as part of this item.
So we are literally at the point where all we can simply look at is whether we take forward this into the work programme. My concern is picking up on what people are saying is that it'll be too late for the service, and I think what I'm picking up is that what we really want is because I do believe there's new information out there that possibly wasn't even there on Monday, which would potentially mean it was a different view taken, but there's no way that we can influence that through this committee tonight.
Not through the agenda you have this evening. I mean, I'm not aware of what new information numbers are referring to. Obviously, the powers this committee has this evening in terms of the items you have, there's no constitutional powers in terms of what you've been expressing. You haven't got this item on any further committees moving forward. You have a council meeting next week, but there are no constitutional elements within that meeting in order to discuss the trade waste business. So outside of that, you're then obviously back to your normal constitutional arrangements in terms of what you can kind of do.
So I think what we've got to focus on then, members, is what we do going forward. I mean, obviously we've already discussed that, we do need, the constitution, once we get to the annual meeting, will allow that, where we're going to change the process on many of the reports we get, that they'll come to us first before us.
And obviously concerns that members have had since Monday, and obviously from this evening, no doubt they're being expressed through to your group leaders that will obviously no doubt be discussing that with the other group leaders and the leader.
So effectively, we're left with, we just got to hope, you know, we hope that I did hear rumblings this afternoon that group leaders have been talking to each other and you know, they together might come up with a solution. But we can't discuss that or debate that. So we will wait and see what happens.
Just on those points,
Councillor Bishop was first.
it's just on your question though, just because I've got a point to make, but it's just on this, is what powers are there under part 3? So items brought forward in urgency by the chair. Does the chair have any powers there? And then, but we could go back to it. And then the other point was as well, is there's nothing to stop us writing a letter. So we can write a letter as the policy committee to the leader of the council, telling it it's pretty unanimous that we don't agree and raise concern. So we could request that. So we can write a letter to the leader of the council expressing our concern. I think we could also write to the chair of the council requesting special dispensation to bring forward under the. It's very unclear when you read our the rules in terms of bringing forward the urgency factor. So there's the urgency element, which means you can bring forward an urgent question at full council. It's very unclear in our rules that applies to a question to the leader, but it doesn't apply to a motion. But what I'd like to understand is under urgent circumstances, which this would meet, and with the permission of the chair, we should be able to bring forward a motion at full council next week to question this decision. So that's there are a few options that are potentially open to us, and whether they work or not, we could still do them. We can still make the point.
I think it was the, and we go back to item 3 and
You've already dealt with item 3, so you can't go back to it, Chair. It's a procedural thing. So as much as you may want to go back in reverse, you can't, unfortunately. The second item, by all means, yes, you can quite rightly express your concerns to the leader or group leaders via any communication means you want to, as a committee or individually. That can quite rightly happen. So you can do that. The third item, obviously, is something I'll need to refer to the monitoring officer in terms of the constitutional arrangements. In terms of obviously items can come up under urgency, but that has to be at the discretion of the chair. But also in terms of motions, obviously normally have a number of days notice in advance of the council meeting.
New Year's Day.
Which obviously was 9 days back from working days back from next week's council meeting. So we've already passed that. There obviously is items urgent that can be raised through the chair, but that would obviously be at the discretion of the chair. So that would need to be have a conversation outside of this meeting with the chair in advance of next council meeting. So that can be taken away. And
the committee could ask that I and maybe the vice chair write a letter to the leader
And chair.
Because I think that, you know, that is a way forward. Because I think we did make a unanimous group of recommendations that weren't followed. But I think the letter does need to recognise that, you know, yet again, government funding, you know, we recognise the pressure that council are under, you know, because of a result of further government cuts on top of the cuts that we've suffered. And it is a non-statutory service, but, you know, we are really concerned about the impact on many of our small and rural businesses, and just request that there's that they rethink it. Are you happy with that, Councillor Jones? I'm quite happy to move that we write a letter jointly.
Yeah,
Vice Chair.
I'll second
On behalf
that.
of the
I
committee.
think the points have been made that can be included in there. And we're all unanimous that actually we all disagree with the decision, aren't we?
Well, yeah, the reality is, I mean, we've got to balance the books, haven't we? And you know, and I think we're not sure. What we're asking is, you know, can we recognise the pressure that the council is under? You know, like I say again, you know, another government settlement that has put rural councils and this council in a precarious situation. But you know, let's have a look at it. And like I said, it was suggestions of putting the prices up. I suspect if we'd never had this conversation and went out and put the price up to the point where we needed it to be, there would be an equal outcry because businesses are having to pay a lot more. You know, so we are where we are, and it might be, as Councillor Crabb, I think it was, or even Councillor Maskell said, you know, there might be elements of it that we can do and then that's what we can't do. But let's get a letter off, and I think if we do that, you know, with John and Kelly picking up all the points that have been made tonight, and we'll send that off to the leader.
I think the key point is if we can bring a motion to challenge the decision of full council next week.
At the moment, you can't bring a motion to
Yeah.
full council next week because you're past the days in terms of.
And it might well be
bringing
that-
a motion.
It might
Oh, the council had the urgency element, but it's very unclear in ours.
The one thing we just need clarity on is obviously that constitutional point about items under the urgency route. But again, I don't have the answer to that this evening. That's something we would need to run by the monitoring officer to confirm that.
Just on that, because I did research it, so it's very unclear for us, but generally amongst other councils, like I said, it applies to us in terms of asking a question to the leader, but it doesn't specifically mention the motion. But other councils do mention the motion, and it comes down to having the chair agree to it fundamentally.
See, yeah, with respect, Chair, obviously we have to go by our constitution, not other councils. So our constitution is obviously our set of rules.
It depends where it's
Other
interpreted.
councils may have slightly other constitutional rules that might allow certain things. We have to go by our constitution.
Well, I think,
So I think
why don't we want to council? But I think John, John Trose's outline, I mean, he will look into that, but I think the point is, what we want to do as a committee is find a way to make our representation. We've got the proposal seconded by Councillor Jones. Are you all happy with that? You're happy with that? Yeah. Okay, we'll do that then. Can we obviously draft it tomorrow and then obviously
Yeah.
and we'll circulate it to the committee.
Just to be clear, Chair, it's a letter from yourselves as a committee.
Yeah.
rather than,
Yeah, that's we've been.
That's what I'm
That's the challenge we've got because obviously Kelly's not here tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Obviously.
We can put it.
Something as a committee, you're happy either yourself as chair or Councillor Jones as vice chair, draft obviously the thoughts that you've come up with this evening into that letter. That can be obviously then sent through. I think that's something that you need to send something as a committee.
Well, it needs to be drafted by Kelly. She's taken all the notes from.
If you could draft your thoughts and then I can put that into a letter
Yeah.
and let you see it before it goes anywhere.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you, just I'm not here tomorrow, so I don't want to lose any time with it. So
Yeah,
if you two are happy to collaborate, then.
Chair, I was just saying, I think.
Sorry, was
I've
Councillor.
been waiting at least 15 minutes.
Well done. Well done.
At least 10 of those with the chair repeating himself.
So stop it there. So I will not be insulted by.
I wasn't insulting you. The record was
Sorry, Mr. Councillor Bush, I want to go to Councillor Grant. Thank you. Show respect to it.
No, you repeatedly went on about the government, which has nothing to do with our wants.
Sorry, Councillor Grant.
Chair, I was very quickly, I think some the misunderstanding perhaps between John and Councillor Maskell, I think I might have done some detective work here. The appendix that Kelly refers to is indeed on the December meeting, which was probably brushed over because that was kicked into the long grass. Let's talk about it again. When it came back in January for the final decision, there was no such appendix, so I suppose it wasn't brought. So there's a thing for perhaps your procedure. It wasn't brought front and centre. It was an appendix on the December report, but not when the decision was made.
It was on the December.
On the December report, yes, definitely.
Obviously, the December report was presented.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a case of the report was there and there was no discussion how to. It was presented as part of the initial report in December.
Yeah.
Following
Why would it not-
your November scrutiny meeting. When the January report came, the January report referred to the fact it had been to members in December. So there was a link to the fact the report was there, but had been discussed as part of the December report. So it has been discussed in December and January. And when presented at December, obviously the minutes from the meeting previous to that from the Scrutiny and Policy were on there. So again, it wouldn't have subsequently then come again to
I think it probably should have done in.
but again, that's something, Chair, that you can pick up as part of your looking at the procedure of how the decision was taken.
Yeah, it certainly should have done because it's.
So to make it longer.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, are you waiting to come back as well?
I just probably if I kind of just summarise what we want to do and how we want to move forward, because what's really clear is just as a room, pretty much all of us disagree with the fundamental decision that was made. So it's somehow shocking that that decision was carried forward. Word is that there were Lib Dems in that meeting.
Sorry, is this relevant?
It's totally relevant, particularly as what was said earlier.
It is a work program.
I'm getting to the point, but I've got a few points.
Councillor Jones, I think we've made a decision, we've voted, we've decided a way forward, you know, and you know, what I said Councillor Bushell's comment, it is relevant government funding because, you know, the level of funding we get makes a direct impact on the decisions that we have to make. And there are some pretty difficult decisions to be made, you know, when you've continuously had funding stripped, because you know, if we did get a decision that, you know, we've got a service that's losing money, it's non-statutory, we have to decide where we're going to cut elsewhere to be able to carry on that service. You know, we're not like the government, we have to balance our books, but I'll come back to you.
I think something major that nobody's picked up on here, and I think it is within our powers, that because the S&R decision was made prior or after the 9 days before council, that stops even the full council from scrutinising with a motion. So I think we're going to need to move things around so we do have the ability, and probably the policy committee has a meeting prior to that 9 days, so 10, 11 or 12 days beforehand, with no decisions made before that. So if we have something we want to scrutinise, we can then put a motion to council. I understand there's more red tape in that, but I think we've highlighted something that the council isn't able to scrutinise.
Definitely got your
I think
point.
we need to have a chat about that, because we can't even overturn, I don't think council can overturn an S&R decision. Can they?
I think the question you're asking, you know, obviously certain decisions are delegated to certain committees, and I'm assuming this decision is delegated to the.
But what I'm saying is we can't even highlight it to council. So council can't even know that something's happened until it's so far down the line. You know, we're going to be looking 6 weeks, month before we can even bring it to the council's attention.
Let John answer.
There's 2 points there. So yeah, you're right, Chair. The decision is delegated to strategy and resources. That's part of your committee system and constitution arrangement. So again, that's the system you have. That's the system that you have to work by. In terms of the council meetings, so council meetings happen once every couple months, maybe once every 3 months, depending on when they fall. There is always an S&R meeting every month. So there will always be a time, if the council meeting is in the middle of the month, that it will be a certain number of days, probably after when the S&R meeting happens at the moment. So that's always the case, because you'd always have a monthly S&R. Moving forwards, that might not be the case, because S&R is likely to move a couple of weeks later into the month, and scrutiny will go back under the new calendar, because that means that things will come to this committee in advance of S&R. So that may resolve that naturally anyway. But you will always have potentially in a month an S&R meeting quite close to when potentially a council meeting is, just because you've got a monthly S&R meeting and a council meeting that is either towards the end of the month or maybe the second week. So if it means that you're looking at something, bearing in mind most decisions made at strategy and resources are delegated decisions, there may be some things recommended to full council. Those recommendations to full council do go on to that full council meeting. So recommendations from Monday that related to, say, the Future High Streets Fund programme, had a capital programme adjustment, that will go to full council next Wednesday, and that minute will be tabled for you to make agreement with that recommendation. So there will be things that, if they are recommended on the full council, will go. If they're not recommended on the full council, they are then decisions that are delegated to strategy and resources. So it's not as though you call in a decision at full council because you're not happy with something at S&R. That decision, if it's not coming to full council, has already been made and therefore can't be called in or referred to. That means obviously then if you've got a motion or something in the future to put forward, you have to go to the next available council meeting.
I just want to come back to that, if I may, the things that John said.
Really, really quickly. So I think we'll go.
So So as councillors, if we have a disclosable pecuniary interest, that can be positive or negative. Yeah. So you could gain money, you could lose money. But John's just highlighted another factor, which is if it's going to have a change to the capital programme, I would guess that is spending more money. Now, that goes to full council. But this decision potentially saved the council some money. So there was a positive benefit to it, but we're not allowed to scrutinise it. It's rather as odd as planning.
We have been allowed to scrutinise it. We did scrutinise it. We did make recommendations. The
I'm talking about full council not being able to scrutinise it. It's rather like planning. If they approve a planning application, there's no way of challenging the approved. But if they turn it down, people can challenge it. And it seems odd that the council wouldn't be able.
Very different because that's.
Yeah, but if as councillors, we have to declare whether we gain or whether we lose, regardless of which is happening or the potential.
But that's because it's a personal that we represent.
It is,
the
but
council.
why can't the council scrutinise something even if it's not going to cost the council more money?
The constitution.
Can we take Councillor Jones and then we're going to wrap it up with John giving us the.
Let's spend the next one on a few of the points and do that to finish. The first point I wanted to just come to was the point that Councillor Crabb made, was that several people did approach me after that meeting and say it was really.
Councillor Jones, we have already.
If you can let me finish, please.
No.
Please let me finish.
No.
Please let me finish.
Sorry, Councillor Jones, we have already we've already made a decision on how we're going to progress. We're going to write a letter.
There's a few points we want to progress on there, isn't there? Because we want to move forward with this as well, don't we?
Yeah, we need to move on to the next.
So I just wanted to make it clear
Councillor
that
Jones, Councillor Jones, I'm asking you.
I'm asking to be able to have the right to speak. I'm not sure why you're shutting me down.
I'm not shutting you down. I think
You are.
we've all spoken, every single person, apart from Councillor Coombs. I think everybody in the room has spoken to this item. We have already voted and made a decision of how we.
That's the important points I wanted to make.
Well, I'm sorry, but we've made a decision. You know,
If I can carry on, it was clear that there were Lib Dems that were begging.
Jones,
Lib Dems that were.
Councillor Jones, I have asked you.
You're not going to let me speak.
I have let you speak. I've let you speak several times. We have already taken a decision. We voted. We're going to write to the leader. I don't know if Kelly wants to.
There's the second part, which is the investigation.
I think we've already made the. Unfortunately.
No, that's separate to it. There's an entire investigation that we wanted to put forward here that was talked about.
Well, we've
We voted on one part, but that has nothing to do with this.
I'll take some advice from Councillor John Triggs. Sorry.
So the item that you're discussing tonight is your work programme. So we need to keep going back to that because we seem to be talking quite a lot about the discussion that we had on Monday. So the item is your work programme.
Sorry, let's stop. Councillor.
I was going to put my hand up and ask Adam, but I was just trying to. I have a question for Adam, if I may. I was trying to get further.
To the point I made earlier, can we please respect others when they're talking? And listen. Thank you.
So the consideration on your agenda tonight is your work programme. That's your item you're discussing. So obviously, following the proposal that's been put forward by Councillor Jones around the proposed item, which was to review of the decision to end the Tradeway service. Well, we've just discussed that element of it, which you can't review the decision. That decision has been made, but you are going to express your concerns via a letter to obviously the leader and the chair. The paper that was in front of you was obviously then to look at the process which was followed to make the decision. So as part of the discussion you've already had, you said you want to have a look at part of your work programme, the process to how the decision was made. So that's obviously to be then programmed within your work programme and how you want to actually achieve that. But we don't want to stray into the same conversation we've just been having or talking about discussions or political parties that potentially have done or not done something, which I think is where you were deviating into. So I think the important focus now has to be on paper that's in front of you. The consideration for all committee members is around the proposal around you wanting to put forward a paper that reviews the process that obviously ended with the decision being made including that element of reviewing the public consultation. That's what's been put forward. That's for your consideration and discussion as a committee.
You're happy to,
You're moving that, councillor Jones. If I don't talk about the Lib Dem whip, you're happy that I go back to this point?
I'm happy to second it, because I think, the paper itself, viewing that as outlined by John is fine by me. And then we.
This is around process and procedure rather than detail within that, because that's what will come out within your review that you'll carry out. So the elements that you might want to talk about around the review, the things within the review will come out as part of that process, which will be either through whether you want a working group, whether you want to go through a certain process to get there. What you're considering tonight is the items that are in front of you around what is it you actually want to review, not actually carry out that review this evening. I think that's important for clarity from members' side. Talk about what's actually on the paper, talk about how you actually want to get there, talk about when you want that in your work programme, and then agree a timeline then with members.
And I think, I think this is something that can probably be done as a committee as opposed to a working group. I would.
Can I make a proposal for a working group? Can I make a proposal?
You can, of course you can. You're very welcome to make a proposal as a working group, but I would have thought this is fairly simple. We all agree that we need to review the way that decisions are made and put forward recommendations. I think it's a pretty simple piece of work, really, that could come back to, future.
I mean, obviously there'll be processes you'll want to obviously look into in terms of what process was undertaken. That would obviously no doubt entail bringing in certain officers who've been involved in bringing the papers to the committee. So that may be something. I mean, yes, you have an option of doing that through a working group and then reporting that back to this committee, or you could actually, like, as you say, carry out that review as part of the actual committee itself. So,
I mean, I'm just conscious at the start of the meeting, we said we do not want more than 2 working groups going at one time. We've already got 2 going. Are we going to delay it if we don't? I mean, personally, I would be quite happy for a report to come back as soon as possible, for us to consider. Councillor Bishop was first, then Councillor Wilson.
I'm just thinking, since we're discussing the work programme, can we add the feasibility of trade waste gap to our work programme?
I mean, you haven't gone through a process of doing a form in terms of procedure, but in terms of the feasibility, the decision has been made already by Strategy and Resources. So in terms of looking at the feasibility of it, in a sense, that has been already presented as part of the report that came to members and came to this committee as well, which sets out the current financial viability of the service. When members made that decision on Monday, they were presented with the financial implications of each of the options. Each of the options would have had the same impact on the budget, because if members had made a decision to cease the service, then obviously the
Sorry, you have to stop again. Please, let's have some respect for officers when they're talking. Thank you.
So when the 3 options were presented on Monday, the proposals, each proposal had a financial implication. So in terms of impact on the budget, if members took the decision to cease the service, that had a cost neutral impact on the budget, because all of the costs and all the income taken out. Members made the decision to retain part of the service or all of the service, then that also has a cost neutral impact on the budget, because the fees would have gone up to cover the cost of the service. So all 3 options have a net neutral effect on the authority's budget. So that, in a sense, is the financial viability of the tradeways service, because whichever option members are taken would have resulted in no net cost to the council, because ceasing the service would have removed the budgets. Keeping the service, whether in part or in full, would have meant the budget balanced, because the costs would have been offset by the income with the members agreeing.
Discussing the decision. We've just been shut down and now we're discussing the decision. It's about the process. That's what we want to look at, isn't it?
This is what you're talking about. So I think that I'm just trying to come back on the financial sustainability question, because obviously that was posed about wanting to look at the financial sustainability as part of a work programme item.
I just want to propose that we do have a working group for this, because I just think that trying to cover it in one meeting is just not, it's going to be unwieldy. we've, you know, I appreciate there are 2 on the go at the moment. Maybe we can reorder the ones that are actually happening because this is more urgent, perhaps. But, you know, Councillor Jones has proposed this, so I think he should chair it. And I just think that people on it can then go away, do a deep dive into some of the areas and bring things back like we do with the normal working group. I just think we should make a decision, because we've been talking about it.
Can I just check with John and Kath? I mean, obviously, what officer support would you need for it? And sorry, Kath, you know, because I mean, is it possible that we run this one as well?
Yeah.
Without,
I think if you're looking at a work.
the health inequality one is really important. I think, you know, and the panel market one as well, because again, it's a budget impact.
Yeah, so in terms of having a working group, in terms of reviewing decision, that probably is the best way forwards, because obviously you'll no doubt have questions you want to ask of officers, which might be more maybe easier in that working group environment before it gets reported back to this committee. So that probably is the most sensible way forwards. In terms of officers, you would need to be looking at all of those officers that were impacted in terms of bringing the report forward. So that would be officers within the environmental enhancement team, obviously officers that were involved in terms of the in bringing the data that's in that report. So there'll be a number of officers that would need to be in there. So that's something that we can firm up who would be the appropriate one as part of it.
But I guess the question I'm asking is, have we got the capacity to run all 3, given that as Councillor Wilson said, you know, this is quite urgent?
I would probably suggest, Chair, if you want to run this one takes probably your priority, because this is something that seems to be expressing concern amongst members.
No, that's fine.
Again, it doesn't change the decision that's been made, because obviously that's a separate issue, but what you're doing is reviewing the process that we got to there. But obviously in terms of resources for officers and for obviously this committee reviewing such reports that would come, you probably don't want them all coming at once. So having looked at that and your other items, that may be when you come to scheduling. So for this purpose, you're probably suggesting this is of a high priority.
Yeah.
So at this stage, because you've got other ones to consider, you can probably leave that as high priority for this part of the conversation. Agree that's what you want to do, and then move on to the other items. Agree then which ones are then of either high, medium or low priority if they do go forwards, or if, depending on how we discuss those in a minute, they may not go forwards. And then you'll come down to programming in your work programme, because then you may decide to do this one first, then potentially look at something like the pannier market afterwards, and then potentially see where that is in your work programme moving through the calendar year.
Councillor Cummins and Councillor Turton and Councillor Bushell.
Before I would engage in the vote, I want to know what this working party's going to be about, because I can understand we should have a working party about how those decisions were made, but not about the decision, because it's disappointing, the decision, but we've already had all that conversation tonight. I just want to be clear that this working party is about how the decision was made, not the decision.
Yeah, if I wasn't very clear, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A similar thing, really. I was just going to say, if we review the process and the working party discovers there was a clear problem with the process, then surely the decision, we need to go back to the decision, because if the process was held, you know, put together
6 months.
but we're saying we can't change that decision. If we have clear evidence that the process was wrong or incorrect or an error or something, surely that affects the decision.
Yeah, I might have understood this differently. As I understand it, we're looking to make sure that in future there's a better process. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not certain they were saying here that the process was wrong or wasn't taken in the right manner. Ultimately, this is around reviewing the process that was taken for a service decision. That's not going to change the decision that's been taken. The decision has been made. I think that's the very clear thing we need to make this evening, is this process won't change that decision. This process is looking at the route that the decision was taken, and then if obviously in the future there are learnings from that, that potentially then could be embedded in future decisions the council makes, but this will not reverse or change any decisions that has been made, because constitutionally you can't do that. This is around reviewing how we got from A to B, and that decision was made, and was enough information, sufficient information, making a service decision, and are there things that potentially can be improved in that process moving forwards if the council makes further decisions moving into the future.
But we can mention that, we can make that clear in the letter as well. So we can make, what's quite clear is that there is concern, and we can raise in the letter to the chair and to the leader, if we decide to write to, that we are concerned and we are going to investigate it. Not the decision, but it is the information that was used to make the decision and the process around that decision-making process, if everyone's happy with that.
I think it's a procedural thing rather than
Yeah.
you're not necessarily
I think
carrying
we're
on
all-
the investigation is
Yeah.
that decision
So I think that was
right or not, because that
Yeah.
decision has been made. What you're looking at, Chair, is the process of how you've got there and making sure that any lessons learned can be embedded into future decisions.
that was moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Jones. I think.
I did stand up my hand up. Some other people have spoken on that, sorry.
I mean, is it? Go on then.
It's yeah, I was trying to find from a learned colleague who's been in council for a long time, their opinion, but they didn't have an opinion. Adam, are we not allowed to use hearsay at any point in council? I just want to clarify, this is not about your point. It's, do we have to make sure that we never say anything that could ever be described as hearsay, or are councillors allowed to give accounts that are given to them?
I mean, I'll answer that one. If you, as long as you stated I've heard. So if you don't state it as a fact, then you know.
If you heard it within there, you'll get shut down.
Can I was asking
I'm
Adam.
not from a legal background, so sure we'd have to go through the monitoring officer, but I suppose you just have to be careful where your sources of information are coming from when
Because
you
all
present.
when people say objection hearsays, I think of the Johnny Depp trial where they were losing. So Amber Heard's side, whenever they were losing, they'd say objection hearsay. And in government, people do have hearsay.
Thank you, Matt. I mean, ultimately, democracy is opinions, isn't it? Different opinions. But yeah, I think it's how you're presenting it. If you're presenting it as a fact and it was hearsay, then.
But if somebody says, I have heard that Lib Dems had a whip, that's acceptable, is it?
Can I also just say, Chair, just based on the discussion about, we're happy to just amend this form based on the discussions, because the aims of the review on the original paperwork just says make recommendations and present fresh information as available. We're really just focusing now on lessons learned, aren't we? That's
A report on the lessons learned, and there will be findings in those lessons that inevitably that will be presented, but it's about presenting the lessons learned. We're not presenting a new decision.
Reporting on the process that was undertaken and lessons learned, if there are any moving forwards.
But we hope that maybe the senior leaders listen to what's been raised here.
No, well, and I'm sure that the will, you know, we really do hope that they listen, you know, to what's been said tonight and yeah, we'll see where we are. So there's two recommendations, as I understand it. One is that the chair and the vice chair will write to the SNR, to the leader of the council and to the chair of the council, expressing the committee's, you know, understanding to a point that the budget restraints they're operating under, but disappointed at the decision made, and ask that they review that. We can't make them, but we ask. And the second part is that we review the processes through
And making aware that we're doing a
Yeah.
review.
In that, are we going to have meeting timings to allow
That's
us to highlight things to council?
that's a separate point.
That'd be with the chair. And do we elect a group? Do we need to put, do we know what the group that will be on that working group? Do we need to decide that tonight, or does that come back?
I think in terms, obviously, you agreed 9A, which is setting up a working party. It probably, I mean, obviously, if you decide to appoint a chair tonight, you can do. Considering witnesses to call, obviously, I think that's something that we can take and agree with the chair in terms of the process that's undertaken. But certainly, it would probably be useful if you're going to set up a working group to appoint the chair of that working group.
So,
Mm.
So, in agreement of that as a committee, because it's a committee decision.
Well, I think Councillor Wilson, in her recommendation, suggested Councillor Jones. I'm happy to second that. And then we do need volunteers that are going to sit on that group. I've got some volunteers.
So I'm waiting because I know that we've got another one of these, which I think is easier, and I don't want to stretch myself too thin.
Well, I'm going to give a health warning now. We're already on 3. You know, we
This
really
was
are.
submitted before the one that we're discussing here.
You've already decided as a committee that this takes priority, so we, you know.
Objection, yes, I.
Don't even take. Okay, So can I have some volunteers to join that working group, please?
Are you essentially saying that before we've spoken about this, we're not allowed to have a working group for it?
Then the other side of it is the other way we can.
If you want your chair to then liaise with members around which members be on that working group, if that's an easier way forward. So
Right.
free to set up a working party, you've agreed a chair, you've got other ideas to consider where you want that to fit in your work programme and the timings of that. Once you've gone through that process and you know when you're looking at things, because it might be if you've got 3 or 4 things here, 1 or 2 of those things might be more.
Well, I think what we need, what you're saying, we need to go through the whole, all 3 of them to then prioritise them. But the reality is we cannot do all 3.
It depends how much work.
Beauty parade and see what the best they can offer the members.
I do.
Come with me, I've got lemon drizzle cake.
I've still got Christmas cake.
Okay.
Just one other point, is it, and the members of this don't have to be on this committee, do they? They can be separate to this committee.
Working group can be.
No, working group.
Working group can be.
Or expert.
People report into this committee.
But
But in terms of membership, obviously, yeah, be mindful in terms of numbers and resources and.
And there's a
I
feather.
mean, sorry, no, there's another question. We need to set a definitive number, surely, because we could end up with, you know.
I think it's in, I
And
think
does it need
there's
to
a
be
recommendation, isn't there? It's like
You can't limit the number if you're going to have expert witnesses coming in. You can't say, oh, you know, we're going to pick 2 out.
Councillors that are working.
Yeah, the committee itself is limited.
But what happens if there are councillors who are pulled in as expert witnesses?
Well, yeah, they're a witness, they're not a member of the working group.
Okay.
Maybe you say, Jay, you appointed a chair, maybe if the chair liaises with you as chair of this committee, then between yourselves, once you've got.
I was seeing guidance from officers as well, so we can come up with, there's not 100 people on that. Don't really listen.
4 or 5 would be plenty, to be honest, of what we're working group.
We do want to move quite quick as well, I think.
Yeah, but that's the point. If you, the more people you got, there's more dates you got to try and find. So, okay, so we cannot make a decision on that until we've discussed the other 2, so we need to privatise them, yeah? Is that what we're saying?
I thought we already agreed to prioritise this one.
Yeah. Well, there's been an objection to that.
It's not a rejection. I'm just not going to vote myself to be on a committee when there are other things we're going to discuss. And I might want to be on the working parties for those. It was more about how much time I've got to spend.
I was putting out is that we cannot prioritise every single one. So we've already discussed this at the start of the meeting. We've already got 3 working groups agreed. We've agreed that we'll postpone one of the 2, whether it be the Bannier Market or the Bulletin one. You know, we can. If we're going to add another one, someone else has to go.
Some of them have more work than others, don't they?
Absolutely.
Perhaps, Chair, if we move on to the 2 items. Yes, because obviously there may be, once those items are presented and we have a quick discussion on a couple of those items, it may be that maybe one or even both don't need to proceed. We can then come back to maybe the
Yeah,
ones.
that's what I was suggesting, basically.
Yeah.
So the next one I picked up, which is the first one I picked up earlier, is using comms to increase awareness. And renew social media. Sorry. Was this you, Councillor? You introduced it.
Yeah, do you need to introduce it? I think it's one that came up through discussions with Ken and SJ. And it's one of those things that's come up on a regular basis, which is our communication and social media is very good. But by putting more emphasis and having a more proactive strategy in terms of communication, could we actually achieve more through comms? Obviously, this is my background and this is sort of thing I do. So by getting messages out and communicating effectively, for example, around recycling, could we actually improve our recycling rates by messaging and using campaigns more effectively? The same as when you'll see really good positive messages go out about the council, and sometimes it will be attacked. And maybe by changing our communications policy and strategy, we could actually interact more. And you've seen other councils in other areas take on a different approach, which really can improve the effectiveness of the council in terms of the messaging and how things are perceived. So it was I had a chat with Ken yesterday, and they were very excited. We said we wanted to schedule a meeting. We haven't got around to it yet, but I raised it at the point here as something it could be that we looked at. Is basically by looking at our comms method strategy approach, could we achieve more as a council? As a general summary, I hope that makes sense. What I would like to say though is I would drop the priority on this based on the conversations that we've just had and maybe put this one on the pile for another day. But I think there's value in it.
Or we could factor it into a committee report, so that we can all read it and what is up, because you recognise that our social media is pretty good. Could we have a report to the committee in the work programme outlining what our strategy is, and then have we do differently, and then pick it up. If we want to pick it up, we're happy with it, we want to make a recommendation.
Chair, just to say that our comm strategy is running from 2023 to 2026. It is due for renewal. So perhaps with your agreement, the draft strategy could come to this committee for those comments and that input.
You have a final fun year.
Just to add, Chair, there's 3 policies that are there. So there's 2 that are due for renew this year. There's a social media policy which is constantly being reviewed because obviously that's evolving because there's the changing dynamics of social media. So they're all available on our SharePoint, which you councillors have access to anyway. So by all means, in advance of them coming here, have a look at those. But as Adam said, obviously they are due to be reviewed. So they will come here prior to going to then any further.
In those strategies or in those documents, is there anything about myth busting? So when we post something as a council, and then people come in underneath and basically, difficult what to say in a public meeting, but there will be people that come in with all sorts of weird theories or accusations or whatever. Do we have a policy that we will myth bust that and actually correct the record? Would that be part of that? I mean,
That's something we can have a look at.
for me, that's quite important. That
Ken and I had a chat around that, and it was actually Ken had the perfect tone. So if you were to, but social media is very tough to do it right. But if you use Ken as the tone, the way that he can put someone down in the right way that's factual and appropriate, could if you could get that, and if you could get Ken into the social media, but through thinking about how he would answer it, actually that could be really powerful. One of the other things that we touched on was I don't think the council uses, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the council uses LinkedIn. And again, as a business focused council, using LinkedIn proactively could be something to discuss.
Because that's part of the debate. But I think, like you say, it'd be really useful for those 3 documents. That we're only reviewing 2 of them this year. I think it'd be useful for us to see all 3. Anything that is part of our social media strategy, so that we can all have read it prior to the meeting and then make comment. So we're happy with that.
Cool. If Chair, we taken away an action, Chair, in terms of finding out from the comms team when that policy is due for June 26. Once we know that date, then we'll liaise with Kelly to make sure that's built into the work programme for that date to come to this committee.
Thank you. Yeah. I think we have to actually vote on it, isn't it? Really,
Just agreeing what your work programme is.
Yeah. And then the final one is that those items in consideration of planning. Obviously, I think this one has to come from Councillor Bushell. Over to you, Councillor Bushell, too.
It is, yeah. I think that this could potentially be an easy win for the council. Bearing in mind that we've declared a climate emergency. I don't know if people are aware of the fees and things like that. I know recently there was an application granted, which was for a barn owl and bat tower, which was put in, which cost the applicant thousands and thousands of pounds. There was no money to be made from them putting this ecologically beneficial structure in. There was some grant funding, but it wasn't anywhere near close to the cost of the implementation of this thing. But the planning fee, I understand, was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds for something that was quite simple. You know, just the design of a tower to be put somewhere, there's no overlook. It would obviously be designed to follow the grant, so it wouldn't be impacting on the area or the visual impact of it. It would have been done sympathetically. And it seems like there's a lot that's done to detract from that side of things. And equally, if planning, I've always said that, you know, if they grant more applications, there's more money that gets spent within the economy. So if we're looking at, say, a householder putting solar panels on the roof, there's not a lot of officer time needed to say, that's a roof in South Molton, it's outside the heritage area of South Molton. So why don't we charge a lower fee? We rubber stamp it, we get that done quickly. Because it's apparently going to save the planet. Whether we talk about the amount of coal that China burns to make a solar panel is another matter. But I thought that things that are purely for ecological or renewable benefit from householders, I'm not talking about massive wind farms, but a small, you know, household turbine which just goes on your chimney, we might be able to talk to planning and find out whether there's any wiggle room to slightly change the policy, just to allow us to meet some of our goals going forwards. We're always going on about carbon neutral, but actually I think that sometimes we might be able to review the policies and remove some red tape and speed things up a little bit to help save the planet.
Yeah. Okay. John, did you?
Just going to comment in terms of planning fees, because planning fees are set nationally. So in terms of how much control we've got over changing planning fees, there is obviously potential in the future for us to set our own planning fees, but that obviously is something in the future. That's not something that's in place at the moment. So I'm just wondering that local context in terms of how we potentially could change a planning fee when it's set nationally.
We give discounts though, don't we, to planning fees in certain occasions. So perhaps we could put a discount in for things that are purely ecological or what was the other word? Sorry, renewable. So there is potential there for us to discount short term while we're looking at things. And I don't want this to become a cost to the council. So if the officers are putting in more time, then that's fair enough. But if they are saying, oh, we rubber stamp the ones that, you know, solar panels on a roof, bang, job's done, that took me 5 minutes, I just made sure it wasn't impacting on a listed building or anything, that perhaps we could say, right, well, we'll have maybe a short-term discount to see whether people uptake and we can help save the planet that way.
Do you want to come back now? I don't know, Councillor Coombs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Being that we've got the joint planning committee and policy committee, and we're now writing our new local plan, would a suggestion not be that we put some type of question to them or suggestion to them? Would that not be a way of resolving what you want to do?
That's quite a slow process. I'm trying to have a quick, easy, like get the ball rolling. Let's do something good rather than tying it up with these big things, because we can put, if what we do works, we can then say, oh, we've done this and it's made a massive upturn. So can you now put it into the
But I think
the plan?
because we have got, sorry, we have got those working groups, the different strands feeding into the local plan, haven't we? So I think it is a really good suggestion that we use that as the mechanism. But John.
Yeah, we have got the thematic working groups that feed into the plan. I was just in terms of maybe scene setting for this and taking that conversation forward, may be worth asking either Tracy or someone from her planning team to come along and just talk about this in a bit more detail, provide a bit of background context around the item that Councillor Bush was provided, maybe a little bit around the fee setting process and the potential options that we do and don't have in our control. And then that might then provide a bit more context in terms of whether members want to progress this any further,
Yeah.
but have that background context first before we start going down the groups or working
And
groups.
that'll come to a future meeting.
We could build that into a future meeting and the work programme, but ask Tracy or one of her team to come and just provide some background on the back of what's been asked on here, and then members can make an informed decision about whether they want to go any further with that.
No, that's fair enough. You happy with that?
May I note an error that I think the things that I've written in section 6 should be in section 5, but it was a very new form when I was.
It's moving forward now, so don't worry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Councillor Bishop.
try and move some things quickly, you know, get stuff done. That's why I'm trying to find a new way through it.
Councillor Bishop.
Can I quote you on that, Chair?
I was just going to say, I'm on the thematic working group for the environment and whatever, so I can pass that on the next meeting. As a suggestion.
Somebody over there was, yeah, Councillor James.
Well, this is an observation that not everything needs to be a long drawn out sort of thing, does it? We can actually bring up some ideas and get information and actually be quite agile.
Yeah, no, that was the point I was trying to make earlier on, is that sometimes you do need a deep dive. It's going to be helpful to have a working group. Other times it can simply be a report. Decision, because you fully understand the thing.
Yeah, just to add, I think
Sorry, Councillor Bishop.
Sorry, I was just going to say that we already give pre-app free to farmers, so that's something that presumably we could equally do for this sort of thing.
That's what I was hinting at, but I was trying to keep it broader.
I think, Chair, I say the idea of having the pro form and the form was to those types of conversations up, not necessarily to have every form going forward with the working group, because obviously that has to be balanced with resources. So I think as Councillor Jones alluded to, one output may just be to invite officers along to present about an item and decide whether that's something that then goes forward as part of policy setting. So
Tracy and
if we take this back, Kelly will obviously take that back as conversation with Tracy. I think the key thing now is to look at your work programme and your meeting dates and determine from what you've decided tonight. You've obviously got 3 that potentially have a working group, and you've got the other item to come forward from Tracy's team is to which meetings do you want then things to start to come back following those working group meetings on the other 3, or whether you want to move any of those further down the line.
actual work programme.
Bridge on the chair.
Could I make a proposal for what we've just discussed, that we do exactly what John's suggesting, and just bring somebody from planning along to the next meeting. It doesn't need to be a really long thing like it's been tonight. It just means that we can move things fairly quickly rather than them taking forever.
The only thing I wanted to say is the next meeting has got all the budgets.
Yeah,
Next week's meeting is quite heavy with budget, but your March meeting is light and April.
We go for the March meeting, is it that? You know,
March.
giving the officer time, because we
It's a
don't,
lot of months away though, isn't it? And the whole idea of this motion was that we got things done quickly. But by March, people might have stopped forgetting that the sun's coming up and they don't want their panels anymore.
well, I'm going to move from the chair that we do, obviously, we want a quality report.
Yes, eh?
We want a quality report, so you give the officer time to provide a report. It will, February is going to be a big meeting with the budget, so, you know, I think.
But there may be questions that come out. So I'm hoping that rather than a report, we have an officer come to the meeting so we can have a dynamic
If we
conversation.
give them 2 months, that is more reasonable for the officer. It also fits in, it's the earliest we've got space really, so we are pushing up, you know.
Is Kelly happy with that?
February's too heavy with
Yeah.
budget stuff.
Well, I'd move, we put it in March, and seconded by Councillor Jones. Are you moving, you want it to come to February?
I am, no, if Kelly says it can't happen, it can't happen.
Chair, not Kelly. So just
Not Kelly.
No, but she's given information which, and I, as a professional opinion, I'm going to go with that on this occasion.
So we'll ask for a report in March.
But we're going to have the officer come to deliver the report.
I just want you to come through the chat. First.
Made a note to invite the planning
Yes.
Tracy.
We invite Tracy or one of her team to come to March's meeting to report on what's been put forward. So that'll be an officer presentation or there may be a background report that comes with it, but that will be presented to your March meeting. And then obviously the output from that can be further work to be
And
done.
are we going to add in through the chair, obviously?
Put your hand up. I don't say councillor
You
Bush.
couldn't because you looked down at your paperwork. No, are we going to put in something about the discounts that are currently offered?
I think what we can ask the planning manager, through you, Jeff, the planning manager to report on are the existing measures in place for planning fees and what is offered as a council. And then in the context of the request that's come forward on this form, for them to then put forward obviously conversations about that in terms of the measures that may or may not need to be taken forwards.
And just one question for me on this, should the appropriate lead member be consulted? I'm not sure.
Yes.
The appropriate lead
Tim,
member,
I would suggest, but
Ricky is aware that I put this in, and I believe, sorry, councillor Knight is aware that I put this in, and I think he's supportive of it. And he understood it.
it's not in the debate, I'm just saying, I don't want to be us doing something behind the back of the lead member. I think they should be invited. The appropriate lead members shouldn't.
Councillor Knight and councillor Brabs.
Yeah, because you don't want a situation we were talking about earlier, because you can listen to our deliberations. Okay, lovely, thank you. So that's that sorted. We're now back to Councillor Jones's one on processes and working group. But that will just have to take its natural course.
Need to take a vote on Tracy's decision. Sorry, the decision for Tracy to
Yeah, I thought we didn't vote on the work programme.
well, you've asked it to come along, it's a recommendation. So
Yeah.
You could probably take it as all one when we do the work.
Yeah.
Build into the March one, Chair, that obviously you were looking to request.
Yeah.
See Tracy's coming and talk about that at the moment, about it really plan.
So there's the social media strategy. Working backwards back to our, so that would then, when do we, are we looking?
I think with that one, Chair,
April?
we need to find out from the comms team exactly when they're going to be reviewing that, because it's in 2026. So
Yeah.
once, if we take an action back to review with the comms team what date they're planning to review that, because then it would have been a date that it went up to in 26. So if that was
We're also conscious of time, given what we were talking about earlier, that we need it early so that.
but it may be that policy might be due to be reviewed in, say, August 2026. It's due in August 2026. It makes sense that it comes here in the June or July meeting, or the July or August meeting, depending on when that date is. So if we find the exact date when that policy is currently due, because we don't normally review them.
But it needs to be in good time so that there is time for S&R, because presumably it then goes to S&R.
Late, they have to renew exactly on time, do they?
So we'll go back and discuss with the comms team when they're due to be renewed. And then
You're happy with
make sure
that?
it comes here a month or
Happy
two
with
in
that, yeah.
advance of that.
And then back to the process.
So then you've got obviously 3 that you're then doing through specific working groups, depending on when those working groups are first meeting and when you're potentially likely to get some output from those working groups to come back to this committee. You need to work around those days. I suppose that's the challenge you have, is you've got potentially 3 items. Do you still want to consider all 3 items? And when do you want those potentially come back? If you're saying the review of the process of how the decision was taken for commercial waste is high priority, no doubt you'll want that working group to probably start relatively soon. So that once that's determined and that working group has met, and you've met with officers around that, and potentially members that were involved in that decision as well, you may want to bring into that as well. Then ultimately you will then come back to a meeting. So chances are you're not going to do that by the February meeting, because the February meeting is 12th of February, and any outputs from that working group you need to have on the agenda a week or 2 in advance of that. So I can't imagine you're going to be doing that by the February meeting.
Depending on the findings, it might be that we call a special meeting.
Possibly, or you may feed that into the March meeting, depending on, so.
Events might overtake us, I suppose.
I think they're quite, so if you're happy to leave it to me as chair, I'll put a group together, liaise closely with officers and the chair, and we'll get moving, but we'll, at the same time, we're putting forward our letters and But I think we, no matter what comes out.
Need to agree to this, because I mean, I'm a bit, I must admit, because I fear that we're going to drop the pannier market. And, you know, the reality that, you know, if the context of the pannier market was, you know, that was through, you know, we've been sat there for quite some time already. There was a real budget gap with what's happening at the pannier market, which, you know, we do need to look at, and there's evidence based there. And then we've got the health inequalities as well, which we've moved that quite a long way forward on.
But the whole point is we don't have to have people from this group. So we have got the wider core of councillors.
Yeah, well, I think you're missing the point. It needs office, it is an officer, it needs officer support. You know, our officers are dealing with LGR, they're dealing with day-to-day business. Everything that we do adds to their workload, and I think we just got to be conscious that we've got a very, very small team supporting this committee. That, you know, our expectations of what we can expect of officers. Thanks, Elizabeth.
It's on the agenda, but would it help if I gave my update about where we've got to with the health inequalities now, so that you can inform? I think it probably is.
Just gonna,
It might inform.
well, yeah, it will be helpful. What's on the agenda?
Item 7B.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm happy to, I'm sure I'm allowed to, I'm happy to suspend 7A for a second while Sarah will move on to 7B.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the challenge you have, Chair, is I suppose you don't know the timings of when you obviously potentially have a working group and when that may feed into this committee. So the work programme
I think with the planning market, we wanted a report back by April, didn't we? From memory.
I think that was the original plan, Chair. So if based on the work programme you've just been looking at, February obviously is heavy in terms of the budget. March, you're potentially bringing somebody from planning in to talk about the proposal that's obviously being discussed. But I don't think March is going to be necessarily a long meeting. So if you're in the March meeting, it's building the review of the process of the decision into March, because Councillor Jones is kickstarting that one relatively quickly. That could come to the March meeting, subject to obviously the update on health inequalities. That may then take priority over then maybe when the pannier market one comes back. But pannier
Can the work, because obviously, like I said at the start, I'm hoping that we've not even had the first meeting yet.
Yeah.
You know, we've been running around a bit with the pannier market, haven't we?
Yeah, I think the pannier market was that meeting, that initial meeting was going to be possibly next month. You're probably going to be a couple of months in terms of absorbing information and bringing something back on the pannier market.
Oh, yeah.
So you may want to bring the pannier market into, say, the April meeting.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. Well, what I don't want to do, we need to have had some meetings and seen some facts and figures, discussed it. You know,
I think that will drive your timetable. But even if you
at the same time conscious of officer support.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you are wanting to build things into your work programme now, you can build them into your, say, March, April, May meetings.
Yes.
But that can move. You can move things at your next meeting if you want to. When you come to your February meeting and look at obviously you do all the budget items, you will also have your work programme then. You'll have a better idea then in your February meeting, having started those working group meetings, as to whether it's still feasible to have those items coming back in those future meetings. So it's just saying it can be fluid. You don't have to fix it now. You can put it into a month and then.
This could be quite snappy, actually. Could be a whole series of questions. Just go to those officers' reports and to present it and stuff.
Okay, so
I like snapping for the record.
I'm a bit confused now whether I'm going to 7B or not, or are we making the decision on 7A first?
I think you could go to 7B, Chair, and we'll
Yeah.
decide whether 7 is one, I think.
Yeah, go on, Sarah. Give it to you.
Okay. So I met with Councillor Coombs and Councillor Bullard online on Monday because we wanted to just kick off the health inequalities working group, and obviously that's just the three of us, and then we have got 3 external people that we included in the group we haven't met with yet. So the upshot was really that when we first met, we talked about doing a 6 months timeline roughly, and we could we talked about the meeting every month because we wanted to keep this turned over. What we thought is, because health inequalities is a massive area, and we have this option to go broad or go narrow and effective. We still feel that we need to meet with the external health experts before we can actually determine our full scope, because we've got lots of ideas. But I think most of what we're going to ask is actually probably quite a lot of it's going to be external. So in terms of officer time, there was one piece that actually we thought we could ask of the, and the rest of it, a lot of it will be externally, the 3 external partners. So the one piece that we wanted from officers, we are going to request just a very short summary of what the council's doing at the moment to address health inequalities. I mean, some of this we already know through healthy homes, etc. But there might be other pieces of work, and just to pull it all together in one document. So we've got a health inequalities document with what council is doing. So I don't know how heavy that would be, but to me that was our main focus internally. And then from that we can add to that what the external experts are saying to us, and they're really keen to get going. So although I'm saying, you know, I don't want to like defer my group, because I wouldn't say that. I do think that the external people that we met with, the GP group called Include, they're champing at the bit to get going. That doesn't mean we can't postpone our whole working group completely, but I'm just saying, out of interest, I think we've been holding them in abeyance a bit. Kelly will probably agree, because I think they're quite keen. And we've been saying
For the record, it was Peter.
Thank you.
again.
Oh, they've gone. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Always nice.